So, leave it up to Frank Seravalli to go out there and stir the pot once more. Because we had ourselves the recent episode of the DFO Rundown podcast, and if you wanted to watch it yourself, it's available in the description. It's Twitter, it's The Stage is Set, DailyFaceoff Live Playoff Edition, June 3rd. This, of course, is a 30-minute show. It's like all the DFO podcasts, but what I wanted to do was focus on a quote published by CBJ Center on Twitter, wherein they take a direct quote from Seravalli, which was on the podcast. It's easier for me to screenshot this tweet, put it on the screen, we can follow along together, so I'm not just loosely trying to reframe what he said, but the CBJ Center went out there and tweeted this, as first discovered by Mark Shig. Frank Seravalli on the DFO Podcast Live lists Columbus as one of the teams he is watching to potentially acquire Carolina Hurricanes forward Martin Necas. Vancouver and Calgary were the other teams listed. Seravalli also says he wouldn't be shocked if a trade happened by Saturday. Saturday, of course, is important because it's the first day of the Stanley Cup Finals. So, Seravalli is pretty much saying here that this trade could already have gotten the wheels turning. We could be seeing ourselves the very first deal of the offseason before the Stanley Cup Finals even begins. Okay, wait a minute. No, not first trade. We already saw a trade between the Islanders and the Blackhawks earlier that involved a bunch of draft picks, but other than that, Martin Necas apparently on the move. Seravalli saying Columbus, Vancouver, and Calgary are the teams he's thinking about. And if the timeline is by Saturday, I do wonder just what conversations have already been talked about in regards to this. Now, if you wanted to see a bit more of the specifics, the CBJ Center went out there and said, hey, this quote from Seravalli on the podcast is around 25:30 of the show, so that's available to you if you want to see that yourself. But I wanted to talk about these three teams, the idea of Martin Necas being traded over, and what that could mean if we are taking a look at how things are shaping this week. Not by the time the offseason begins, but right now. Because with Martin Necas getting traded over to one of these teams, of course the idea that would be looming in the back of our minds is there would probably be some sort of an extension already agreed upon. I don't think any team is going to acquire Martin Necas with the intention of negotiating themselves and seeing if they can get it done. Like, if you're trading for Martin Necas, you kind of have to know, okay, we are going to sign you. We know what the dollar amount is. We have to have had these conversations before pulling the trigger on the trade, because trying to fit you into our salary cap structure is going to be big. He's not going to be a cheap player because he's very good, but just getting the intricacies on knowing what details are there, that's super important. So who knows if it's like a signing trade, who knows if there's some sort of negotiation done, who knows if Carolina is able to work something out that helps out all the parties involved here, Necas getting a contract that he wants, and the team that is acquiring him knowing how much they're going to have to pay. Because when you start thinking about these acquisitions this early into the offseason, you're really putting this as your main priority. Like, obviously we recognize that Martin Necas is a good player, but he's so good that any team that's acquiring him would pretty much use this move as their big fish swing in the offseason. They'd be getting it done like 2 weeks in advance, but still, other than signing a Jake Gensel or something, there isn't really much else a team can do that is bigger than getting a guy like Martin Necas. So having that certainty with the dollar amount certainly is important there. Now, when it comes to each of these three teams, let's start out with the newest one, the Columbus Blue Jackets. The interesting thing is, of course, this Twitter account that tweeted out the Necas news is Columbus-based, and a bunch of replies go out there and say, hey, wait, I don't want to do this. Why would the Carolina Hurricanes trade with Columbus? Who exactly is it that Columbus could offer that they would actually be okay with? So I honestly don't really know if there's much of a fit there, considering the talent profile of the Columbus Blue Jackets. A lot of their guys are younger, a lot of their guys still have some more maturing to do, and the guys that are at the top of their game, like Johnny Gaudreau, for example, he's not even at the top of his game anymore. Like, the guy is just washed, complete different version of himself. Would Carolina be interested in that? Probably not. Unless they're willing to take a few swings on some younger guys that still need a little bit more developing who are on ELCs, I don't know if Columbus really has many assets that the Hurricanes would want, especially considering that the Canes' window of opportunity is open right now. They have themselves this speedy, high-volume shooting team. You just got Rod Brindamore back. You've got all this mojo going into next season after a disappointing loss in the second round. So, what? You're going to try to bolster that up with prospects and picks? No, you're going to get some guys that can help you out right now. So, whomever it is on the Columbus Blue Jackets, you can let me know your thoughts in the comments. I don't know if a Kent Johnson or something is going to be able to get it done, if his value is good enough to put himself in that spot for a trade. If a guy like David Jiricek is of value to the Carolina Hurricanes, if Columbus would even want to trade these guys away, who knows, man? Especially if Jarmo Kekalainen is going to be over in Carolina as their GM. He might just want to reacquire all the guys that he had gotten in Columbus. So that, of course, is a new conversation that we can talk about in the comments section below. But I also wanted to talk about the other two teams on the West Coast that are linked to Necas in this Seravalli audio hit as well. The Calgary Flames are in a really tough spot. They're mediocre. They just traded away all of their expiring UFAs, and they're getting younger, which is great, but when you think about what this team had accomplished just 2 seasons ago, where they went since then, the roster turnover, and just how these guys are playing right now, it leaves a lot to be desired. And the same questions kind of go out there with Carolina and Calgary. Hey, what assets do the Calgary Flames have that Carolina could use? You could say there may be a need for improving on goaltending. Jacob Markstrom could be your guy, but unless their salary retained, I don't really know if that's going to work out all too well. Plus, I mean, the Calgary Flames, aside from Kadri, Sharangovich, Huberdeau, and Kuzmenko, they don't really have too many guys that you could say are top-tier offensive options. I mean, I guess you could say Mangiapane, but other than that, there are a few names that you could say are a bit older, but they are more expensive, so would Carolina want to go out there and get those guys? I don't think a Huberdeau would be a target of interest for a Martin Necas trade, unless there are a bunch of other extra younger guys added onto that. If anything, if you're Calgary, you'd probably want to keep all the good scorers you have right now and add a Martin Necas. You'd want to give Necas that role to play with a Huberdeau, so trading away one of these guys doesn't really make sense in my opinion. Other than that, I'm not too sure what else would work. So, Calgary Flames fans, you can let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Is it a prospect? Is it multiple picks? Is it a younger, more inexperienced NHL caliber player or an older prospect who can make an impact? Because if Martin Necas is not going to have a big role in Carolina anyway, if he's going to be playing behind Seth Jarvis consistently, then you might not need the most elite talent going back to Carolina to make them satisfied, as long as the option is cheap and the player acquired is okay with being placed in that role. Which leads us to the Vancouver Canucks, where if Martin Necas gets sent over here, he will probably be a top-line winger. He'll probably be a replacement forward to play alongside of Elias Pettersson, while Suter, Besser, and Miller get things done in the second line. Whether the third winger spot is filled with a guy like, I don't know, Ilya Mikheyev or somebody else, Jake Gensel maybe even, double down, get both of them, Petey Gensel Necas, how do you do? That, of course, would be a fine line. Martin Necas is pretty good, and having him play with Elias Pettersson would hopefully get Pettersson going. But again, same question is asked here. What prospects are of interest? Is it a Lekaramaki? Is it a Willander? Would the Carolina Hurricanes be interested in guys like that? That might not be immediate helps to their NHL teams. If you want to go forward for forward swap and you want to make the money work, then why don't you just do a Necas for Mikheyev deal? How about it? Of course, you're not adding any value whatsoever to your team because Mikheyev is fast, and that's about it. But other than that, he can play a defensively minded role well. Maybe with 50% salary retained and add on another pick or two, the Canucks are able to get this done, who really knows? But you know, I'm just speaking from the perspective of a delusional Canucks fan who has been up way too late and getting no sleep, so this trade idea of mine might be completely out to lunch. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, though. How do you feel about the idea of Vancouver, Columbus, or Calgary acquiring a guy like Martin Necas before Saturday? If that's how things go down for the Carolina Hurricanes, they're so eager to move this guy that it ends up going this far, this quickly, then I am kind of interested as to what else could be on the table and what the return is going to be. Do they bite on whatever it is they get just because they're desperate to move him? Or is it already like, hey, everybody's tossing their trade proposals at Carolina, it's a lot easier for them to choose which one they want? Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.